We are now boarding the airplane. My first airplane ride ever, his second.
Behind me is the intersection of Main Street and Church Street, Elmira, New York. On each corner is a church.
This is an example of freedom of religion, which is stated in the United States of America Bill of Rights.
In the 1800s, there was a lot of religious excitement, each church competing for the limited amount of followers.
Ontario, one of the 5 Great Lakes.
Ontario forms the border between Canada and the U.S.
As you can see, it's really windy, but even without the clouds, you probably wouldn't be able to see Canada.
The lake is so big.
We are in Fayette, New York. Behind us is the Erie Canal. There are 82 locks in the Erie Canal.
Construction began in 1817 and finished in 1825. That means this took 8 years to build the 363-mile-long canal.
And that is really long. The Erie Canal is built to create a navigable water route from New York City and the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes in the west.
In the 1800s, there were no steamships or railways. Water was the most cost-effective way to ship bulk goods.
The canal made regions in the western New York open to settlement and populations grew.
The Erie Canal system is recognized as the most successful, influential, human-built waterway and one of the most important works of civil engineering and construction in North America.
The canal is used for recreation. If you can see back there, there's people on canoes, and there's a boat.
We're going to watch them empty the lock. The lock doors are opening now to let the boats inside out.
That's how far it's dropped.
Here we are at McPherson Ridge, where General Buford and General Reynolds made the bold decision to fight the Confederates as they were advancing on Gettysburg.
Cannons like these were used to fire people. Let's head over to the cannon that fired the first shot. It began here in the morning of July 1st, 1863.
The barn in the background was used as a hospital during the Civil War.
On my right is some pickets, which was used as a barrier between the Union and the Confederate.
This monument right here was the place where the first shot of the battle was shot.
The Confederate thought it was a good idea to gather in the railroad.
But as the Union started to advance from the pickets over there, the Confederates found out that that was a bad idea.
The Confederate ended up getting taken prisoner or killed. Where Pickett's Charge took place. Pickett's Charge is the most deadliest battle in the Civil War.
The Confederates started out with 12,000 troops lined up against the trees, but came back from their charge with only 6,000. There were 1,500 Union troops were wounded, missing, or killed.
The single big tree over there is known as the high water point mark. This is where the Confederate pushed into the Union ranks.
Little Round Top. The Little Round Top was very helpful when the Union was defending against the Confederate.
When the Union came to the Little Round Top to defend it, they hurriedly put together shelters like this. But usually, the Confederate came before they could finish, so they had to build it really fast.
Confederates came out of the tree lines on Big Round Top and the tree line down there. As they advanced, Unions fired down on them. But even with the smaller amount of Unions up on the hill, the Union held back the Confederates for that night. Civil War sharpshooters were equipped with a scope that could shoot a soldier from 1,000 feet away. Their guns could be loaded 3 times faster than the muzzle loaders that most soldiers used.
General Reed and Lieutenant Hazlitt were shot by Confederate sharpshooters that were 500 yards away at the Devil's Den. We are now at Devil's Den. Up there is Little Round Top where we last reported. The smaller monument, not the big castle, but the smaller pillar thing, is where General Reed and Lieutenant Hazlitt were killed. Right here where I'm sitting may have been where a Confederate with his sharpshooter gun sat and fired at the Unions.
The smaller monument has a pretty funny story. That monument was built by the Pennsylvania Regiment, and the New York is the castle. The first Pennsylvania monument was only about 4 feet tall, and it wasn't very fancy looking. But when New York started to build their castle monument, Pennsylvania got a little jealous, and so they relocated their smaller monument back a little bit into the trees and built the taller castle-looking pillar that stands about 2 feet higher than the other castle.
Look at all the obstacles.
Behind us is the line of trees called Seminary Ridge that we showed you earlier, where Pickett's Charge began.
That line of trees is about a mile away. So just imagine being a Confederate soldier and having to run a mile to reach the Union troops while being shot at.
This is the angle of which General Armistead and about 200 Confederate soldiers ran across across to attack the Union soldiers.
They reached the cannon but were soon overwhelmed, and all of them were killed, captured, or wounded.
Historians have described the high water point as the area around the clumps of trees and the angle of rocks.
This was the turning point of the Civil War, and we were standing right by it.
Historians believe that this is the area where Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. This is also the gravesite of Jenny Wick. She was the only civilian casualty during the Gettysburg battle. She was killed when a stray bullet hit her while she was making bread.
Although Abraham Lincoln was not the keynote speaker, he did properly consecrate the battlefield and the cemetery, which is right over here. He also reassured the audience that the soldiers did not die in vain.